Hello, Brubs. We're back with Salem's Children by Mary Leader, author of Triad. A heritage of horror rises, stalks, kills. This is a 1979 book, and we shall pick up chapter. Well, we are going to pick it up at chapter 16, but we lost it. There it is. Chapter 16. The sun lay birth bloodied. The sun lay birth bloodied upon the hills when Rowan sat down to breakfast the next morning. Are you sure you feel well enough for school? I asked. Yeah, in a low tone. I won't be coming home early. I'm going to the patch. Oh darn, I forgot. Iris isn't coming in today. Edna will be there, so the gang won't. Edna Bradbury, the postmaster's wife and town gossip, could preach love and slander her neighbor in one sentence. Still, this morning I could have blessed her. Rowan stuffed some granola into her mouth, snatched up her books, and ran. As I watched the school bus swallow her and vanish down the hill, I ached for the parting kiss and hug she used to give me. Now I'd settle for a smile. I sat holding my coffee cup awkwardly in my left hand, the other nearly immobilized by pain. Macduff padded into the kitchen and began to chase his tail, his way of telling me he needed to go out. As I opened the door, Dana stepped in. How's Mother Carrier this morning? I asked, still sleeping. Her face was grim. I do not understand your cousin's husband. I could have cried when he struck her. Of course, she took the brandy herself. I was trying to be fair. Yes, after he put the bottle so conveniently by her side, he wants to prove me incompetent to care for her. She reached in her pocket and took out her knife, slipping it out of its battered sheath. Your finger's swollen. Let me see it. I winced as she slit the bandage. This should have been taken off hours ago. It's grown too tight. She pressed the nail gently, almost sending me to the floor. I thought so. It continues to bleed under the nail and is building up pressure. She went to the stove, picked up the hot tea kettle, and poured some water into a cup. Then she laid the blade of her knife across the red hot grates. What are you going to do? I asked apprehensively as I saw the metal grow rosy in the blue flame. Don't worry, this isn't going to hurt as much as your finger does right now. Come over here and stand beside me. I want this blade to stay as hot as possible. I obeyed hesitantly. Hold steady. I thought of the Indian's reputation for enduring pain. Biting my lower lip, I held still as the metal burned through the nail and then was withdrawn. Dark blood shot out of a tiny triangular hole, bringing unbelievable relief. I hadn't needed to be brave at all. Something tells me it wasn't that simple, but this was my English grandmother's, she explained. Her hand trembled as she slipped the knife back into her pocket. She gave it to me when she died. I almost always carry it. As I stood over the sink, watching the dark blood ooze from the nail, I saw a shriveled, twisted thing staining the water in the cup. In the cup, dark brown. The hell kind of wording is that? Twisted thing straining the water in the cup, dark brown. That's Indian medicine, she said. A root I dug out of a swamp. It will help prevent infection and prepare the bed for a new nail to grow underneath. It will also deaden the pain. It's almost gone now. That's just because it feels so much better than it did a moment ago. Dr. Brune arrived as she finished bandaging. You're just in time, I said. Dana's making waffles. I came to see how the finger is doing. Then you're too late. Surgery is completed, and the patient is in the recovery room. With the pain gone, I was ready for anything. All right, I said after Dr. Brune had cleared his throat several times. What's up? Suppose somebody starts talking. He turned to Dana, but she remained silent. Then I tell you, it's about Mrs. Proctor, he said. I've been observing her for some time now. Her deterioration has been rapid. I know it is not my business, but I'm wondering if there was a pathology report on that mole Dr. Carrier excised. You suspect cancer? I faltered, the syrup turning bitter in my mouth. I merely raised the question. Surely Dr. Carrier had the specimen analyzed, although, he sighed, it is a sad fact that too many physicians neglect this. In view of the tremendous weight loss she has suffered this last year, well, Mr. Proctor is your cousin. You might ask him about it. Syrup cascaded over Dana's waffle and plate and onto the table as she sat transfixed. I took the pitcher from her. She seemed unaware of what was going on. What's wrong, Dana? Dr. Brune asked. The wart on her finger, she said slowly. I never thought. He shook his head. I doubt that was related. Besides, it was Dr. Carrier who excised it. You nearly made it atrophy. But I should have warned her first because I remember she once said something about his having removed a mole. I suppose I just assumed that a pathology was done. And it probably was, he soothed her. You're worried about melanoma, aren't you? You know about that? He turned to me, surprised. Clergyman's daughters learn a lot of things, I replied, and then the impact of it hit me. Oh, dear God. He touched my hand. We don't know anything of the sort. Surely Dr. Carrier took the precaution. Thank you. Dana sat stirring her coffee, her gaze drawn inward. No, he didn't. I've been seeing it in her face all along, and I didn't recognize it. I'm as guilty as he is. No, Dana, he admonished her. We must not bury her yet. I won't be here to bury her, she said from a distance. I didn't know what she meant, but I didn't like it, and there was no asking once she had shut the door. I shivered. Now you have something to tell us, Dr. Brune said to her. She started as though out of a dream. Oh, yes. Her eyes darted to one side. You're going to be very angry with me, Doctor. I have made much work and trouble for you. We Indians regard certain things as sacred, and we do everything in our power to protect them. I had to be sure about you, Mitty. I've been watching you, analyzing you ever since you came here. I know, I grinned. Forgive me, I have been. Perhaps rude. Last night, as I was coming down the stairs, I overheard you and Dr. Carrier talking about the cave. Now I know what's in your heart, and I can speak. Your aunt worried about what Charity and Damon would do with this land if they were to inherit it. But if she left it to Ward or even to them jointly, there would always be hatred between brother and sister. So when your husband was killed, she knew what she would do. Ward didn't need this property, but the Carriers did. They've always lived beyond their means. I'm sure Tyler Bishop and the bank virtually own them. Get away from me, fruit fly. Why can't these things go away? You're going to need help, Mitty. Dr. Carrier's determined and desperate, and his wife is equally strong willed. They'll erode you bit by bit like the river he hates until they get what they want. She paused, and for a moment there was no sound in the kitchen, except for the intrusive humming of the electric clock. Why do you apologize, my friend? Dr. Brune asked Dana. These problems are no fault of yours. I'm only coming to my confession, she said. I haven't been fair with you. I'll let you search one cave after another, while all the times I've known, if you will be patient with me, I will tell you. Within the hour, the three of us were splashing our way through heaps of fallen leaves toward the cave. Above, the trees were resplendent with golds and reds and russets, but this was a fickle and fleeting beauty. One last glorious burst of fireworks, and the trees would stand denuded and trembling. Dr. Brune came prepared to climb the Matterhorn. He had changed into high-laced boots, knickerbocker hosen, windbreaker, and heavy gloves. An Alpenhut, what the heck's an Alpenhut? Decorated with a red feather and an Edelweiss pin perched jauntily on top of his white hair. A camera and rucksack and a coil of rope were slung over his shoulders. A lantern and survival kit hung from his belt. And he carried pitons, and a pickaxe in his arms. Every now and then I had to scrape off the leaves that stuck to his spiked boots. Dana backpacked the lunch and carried an armload of tools as well. Because of my finger, they had been reluctant to let me accompany them. But a broken arm couldn't have kept me away after Dana told her story. Her father, Mahinook, or Two Knives in English, had taken the amulet from my cave, but from a lower level, where he had found the remains of an unknown people. His maternal grandfather had later identified some of the artifacts as being typical of his tribe, but much older. Then these Indians were Nuada, I said, not Mandan. We call ourselves Nuada, she replied. The white man named us Mandan. The missing piece in the puzzle slipped into place. Subconsciously, I must have known all along that this was the way it would be. Dana's father had propped up the opening to the lower level, had stopped up the opening to the lower level of the cave with rocks and rubble after carefully replacing the jewelry, baskets, and pottery he'd taken out to show the old man. In spite of his load, Dr. Brune reached the entrance to the cave first and had dumped his equipment on the ground before we arrived. He pointed to a broad wooden plank spanning the drop-off between the opening and the chambers beyond. I must be getting forgetful, he scolded himself. I didn't intend to leave that plank there. I've been here since, and you had put it away, Dana assured him, and I'm positive I hid it in the bushes when I left. We don't want children getting lost or hurt in there. Perhaps Damon and his group had been snooping around, I suggested. Then you must be all the more careful, Mitty, she warned. After driving in the pythons, Dr. Brune rappelled down the sheer sides of the crevice, fastened the rope, and then guided Dana down. The far wall was undercut so that once they had gone a few feet, they completely disappeared. I wasn't particularly entranced with my role of sentry. I listened wistfully to the sound of Dr. Brune's pickaxe striking against rock in the black void until the muffled echo of their voices became nearly inaudible. Then I seated myself on a rock just outside the cave mouth and got out my sketchbook and pencils. Across the deep cleft lay Bishop's Bluff, like a gigantic thunderbird, sunning itself beneath the blazing blue sky. Scarlet and gold and russet filigrees were interspersed with occasional hot pinks against the dark black green of evergreens. A flock of geese came honking out of the north, veered from its course to swing over my head, then circled back, and resumed its southward migration. Gray fox squirrels leaped from tree to tree, pausing every once in a while to nibble acorns and butternuts. What do you got, bruv? I began blocking out a landscape, but my finger was too painful, and I soon put my sketchbook aside. Even though the sun was warm, there was a sharp chill in the wind, so risking court-martial, I abandoned my sentry post temporarily and moved into the shelter of the cave. I crossed the plank, slipped through a narrow opening, and stepped into a large chamber beyond. Jagged stalagmites rose to meet the stalactites, hanging from the vaulted ceiling overhead. The beam of my flashlight bounced off the rock formations, casting shadows on the walls that resembled witches and shocks of corn reflected in a pond. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. A lone bat circled my head making weird high-pitched squeaks, then reported back to base, somewhere in the hidden reaches of the cavern. This was only the antechamber of the cave. As children, Gareth and Ward and I had penetrated much farther. The chamber beyond, I remembered, was even more vast. We had called it the theater because the floor at the rear was raised like a stage. Beyond that, a spiral shaped room, reamed out by some primeval whirlpool, led to a confluence of passages into which we had never dared venture. Someone had cleared away the pillars in the center of the first chamber to provide a broad aisle leading to the next room. Their remains lay on either side in great disorderly heaps, works of nature that had taken eons to form and moments to destroy. Here and there, water dripped from the ceiling as the cavern patiently set about forming new stalactites. Although there was no wind here, I still felt a chill. My light routed the shadows behind the formations as I pressed forward. Something whisked by me. I stopped, holding my breath. Only the drip drip of water and faint scuttlings in the gloom. Mice, bats, and my imagination. As I flashed my light over a rippled, varicolored limestone pillar, I became aware of a shadow that stood its ground in the murk. A low train. I moved toward the open area, turning my light this way and that, pretending I hadn't seen. As the beam fell on the column, oh man, my nose. Sorry, I had to spit into a towel. Where was I? I moved toward the open area, turning my light this way and that, pretending I hadn't seen. As the beam fell on the column again, the figure retreated behind it. I spun around and headed back toward the entrance, but it kept up with me, moving silently from pillar to pillar, pressing so close I lost my bearings and unwittingly turned toward the narrow aperture leading to the chamber beyond. In my confusion and terror, I mistook it for the mouth of the cave and made a dash for it. Too late, I saw my error. I whipped around in time to see someone standing behind me with arm raised. My flashlight shattered on the floor and I plunged through darkness into daylight. What were those men doing back of Granny Peabody's house? And she only 3 days dead. One of them was hoisting something on a rope slung over a heavy tree branch. Why, they were hanging Granny's old black bitch. By law, sheep killers must be hanged, but Tibby was no sheep killer. She was gagging, her tongue lolling out of her mouth, her eyes bulging white, her hind paws pawing at the air. There had been no snap to break her neck, and she would swing a long time afore dying. What do ye? I cried and shoved in between the men to lift up the suffering animal and prevent her from strangling. Leave off, woman, one of the men growled. But why? Blood from a gash in her neck was trickling down my mantle. Poor old Tibby never killed a sheep. Nay, worse. The rope slackened as the man holding it gave a roar and clapped one hand to his buttocks. She bit me. That bitch bit me. I'll swear she did. How could she when I've been holding her? I scoffed. Because she was Granny's familiar, given her by the devil himself. Tibby? A devil dog? Granny Peabody were no witch, only a poor, lonely old woman who pleasured in the company of a dog, I lashed out. This Roger Toothaker was a self-styled leech and cunning man with neither the education of a physician nor the wit of the other. He gloried in bloodletting and applying some of the more repulsive remedies of the cunning man. Belike your wenching has sent the pox to your brain, I added. He flushed at the insult, but his tongue rattled on. Granny afflicted Ezekiel Conant with the boils, so Meg and I stopped up his urine in an earthen pot and baked it. Blowed up the oven, But Granny was dead the next morning, sure proof she'd set a spell on Ezekiel. If such a thing were possible, then you and your daughter'd be murderers. Have you thought about that, Roger Toothaker? Dare you accuse poor Granny of being a witch when you use remedies out of the Black Book itself? Bray Wilkins, I addressed an older man standing to one side. Surely you don't believe this nonsense. Make them let her down. He backed away. She's sore hurt, and she was ever a good doggy. I'll warrant none of ye thought to feed this poor beast after its mistress died. No one stirred, but then a deep voice boomed from the outer edge of the circle. Hey, let the animal down. Do ye explain yourself? A short, square-set, powerfully built man, his dark face suffused with anger, came forward. 'Twas George Burroughs, the parson of Salem village, though not for long, I feared, if the Putnams had anything to say about it. 'Twas rumored he'd antagonized them and some other members of the church with his heretical ideas. Worse, he was known to have a sense of humor, an unseemly trait, and a man of the cloth. To me, he seemed more Christian than most of his ilk. If God's eye is on the sparrow, he was saying with pastoral dignity, how much more is it on a faithful dog? Toothaker let the rope go so that the full weight of the animal descended upon me. I laid her down gently, removed the rope from her neck, and began to tend to her wounds. Tibby lifted her head feebly and licked my hand. Now the men were all talking at once. Granny's spirit they claimed, had entered the dog's body. Else, how could such a weak old bitch kill George Corwin's pit bull that never lost a fight? I looked up in startled surprise. Just outside the circle lay the huge dog, its throat torn out. Attacked my dog without warning? Corwin whined. My dog Watt was trained for the London bear pits before I bought him and brung him here. 'Tis more likely you baited them into a fight, Burroughs accused him. I've seen you do it before, George Corwin, and I trow there were wagers amongst all of ye. Though that were a sin, 'twas unseemly pride ye took in your dog, and many a good beast died from his fangs. Tell the truth now, man, lest your immortal soul be damned. Corwin reddened and averted his eyes. This hound of hell here came running across the road with 5 black imps following her, and they all vanished into the foundation of the house. Ripper here, he fair went mad. Forsooth, you saw a chance for a fight and summoned a crowd, Burroughs said severely. Hello, brovs. Not a crowd, Reverend, witnesses, ye might say. So then I let Ripper go in after her, he growling all the time and his hair on end like he seed a ghost. You mean you sicked him on her? The pastor corrected him. The other stirred uneasily. 'Tis true, isn't it? He asked. Samuel Braybrook hunched his shoulders defiantly. 'Tisn't often one gets to see a dog fight. 'Twere no fight, Corwin continued. The bitch ran into the hole, and Ripper after her, but while she was squeezing through, she caught him by the throat. E'en then, only the old Nick himself could have given that old bitch the strength to tear out my dog's throat. Or puppies, I burst out. Look at her tits. I'll warn she has pups under the house, and those are the imps you saw. Burroughs was on his knees by the hole, and now he brought out a squirming black pup. 4 others followed. They ran to Tibby, and despite her wounds, began to nurse. Pups, well, I'll be switched. Samuel Baybrook began to guffaw. Soon all the rest were laughing except Corwin, who muttered a curse, slung his dead beast over his shoulder, and strode away. He no sooner left than a well-dressed man carrying a tiny girl no older than 3, and accompanied by a thin, sour-faced woman wearing a gray mantle with a silken hood and a cap of Colbertine lace, joined the group. Have you been About stirring up more trouble, Reverend Burroughs. Mistress Ann Putnam confronted him. Nay, mistress, I defended him. He spared us a deal of putter. The hell's putter? This fucking fruit fly. I will punch your face, fruit fly. He's about this big, this big. The child was staring at me with big blue eyes, a fragile thing, like a tiny china doll. Is this the baby, Anne? I asked. What a bonny lass. The child held her arms out to me, and I would have taken her in mine, but her father pulled her back roughly. We'll have naught of you, Goody Esty, Thomas Putnam growled. Not when your menfolk steal our rightful lands. Lands awarded us by the court, I replied quietly. The little girl leaned toward me again, her tiny hands reaching out for the buckle on my cloak. Her mother slapped her hands. Have naught to do with her, Anne. 'Tis said her mother was a witch. The child seemed to understand and began to shriek with terror. Let us pass, they bade me, but they weren't the Putnams. They were Damon and Charity. While the shrieking child was rowing, and they were twisting and turning and fragmenting into nothing, and I was floating up out of daylight into. How much longer is this chapter? About 7 or 8 more pages. Darkness again, and a realization of throbbing in my head. How long I'd been lying on the cave floor, I didn't know. Gradually, my mind began to sort things out. I raised my hand to my head and felt a warm, sticky liquid matting my hair. Slowly, my eyes focused enough to make out the thin veil of light seeping into the chamber from the entrance. My assailant must have fled, I hoped. Painfully, I began inching my way over the jagged floor. My hand closed over my broken flashlight for a weapon if I should need it. Then something cut off the faint light from the entrance. Cautious footsteps and a swift pattering. I flattened myself to the floor and waited, my heart banging against the hard stone. But a warm tongue swiped my forehead, then yips and whines and excited barks as a needle-like puppy teeth tugged at my arm. Macduff! And now strong arms were lifting me. Mitty, my God, what's happening to you? Greg touched my hair. You're bleeding. Oh, Greg, thank God. I thought he'd come back and was going to kill me. Who was it? I don't know. I just know someone attacked me. How did you and Macduff find me? I dropped by your house. Darcy was outside looking for her cat. Hasn't she found Jupiter yet? Poor Darcy. She said she'd seen you and Dr. Brune and Dana going off in this direction. Looking as if you were about to make an assault on Mount Everest. I told Macduff to make like a bloodhound. As you see, he shows great promise, although I wasn't sure if he was after a rabbit or you. Where are the others? I couldn't answer for shaking and laughing and crying all at the same time. His arms tightened around me, and I could feel his heart beating against my cheek. It seemed so natural just to lean into him, letting my body melt into his. His lips brushed my neck, then followed hungrily up the curve of my chin until they found my mouth. My bruises and my injured finger were forgotten. Desire flamed within me, pleasure rippling up my spine and into my throat. After Owen, I had thought it possible ever to feel like this again, but a new love had been born in me here in the darkness. New? No, this had happened. This had happened. Before, I ran my fingers over his face as though it were braille. I had known these lips, the long, narrow nose, the deep-set eyes, slightly curved brows, the cleft in his chin, and the hair waving softly over his collar. His hand tugged at a hairpin, unloosening the coil at the back of my head, and the whole mess came cascading down around my shoulders. Ah, Mary, I love thy hair. 'Tis silken soft. I, Will, I love thee, all of thee. Will, he pushed me away. Why did you call me that? I don't know, I murmured fuzzily. You called me Mary. I did what? He was incredulous. That was a nasty blow you had, Mitty. I tensed. I'm not wandering. In the head, if that's what you're thinking. What is it about you, Greg? When I'm with you, I feel we're two other people, and it terrifies me. You're imagining things, Mitty. Anyone would after a blow like that. We better call the sheriff. I sat up. No. Why not? My vehemence surprised him. Because it would. I stopped. I don't like police investigations, I said, letting myself lean against him again. All right, he whispered, running his lips over my nose. But we'll have Damon check you out. Not Damon, Dr. Brune. I was getting sleepy. Besides, I'm feeling fine now, just fine. Don't go to sleep on me, Mitty. You mustn't. His voice was sharp with concern. Don't worry. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Nor I, he breathed into my neck. Oh, Mitty. Ever since you came here, I've been wanting to. What's that? He broke off abruptly as a distant ring of metal on stone reverberated through the rock. Where's it coming from? Another level? Is that where Dr. Bruin and Dana are? Yes, I faltered. Then this is the cave? How could I answer without betraying Dana? I don't know, I said. We came out here today because of a deal Damon proposed last night. That's why I don't want him to look at my head. I don't want anyone to know about this. Reporters are lousy lovers, but Mitty, this is terrific. If this is the cave, it's a scoop, a worldwide scoop. I'll bet the National Geographic will want to do a big spread on this. Oh, you're jumping to conclusions, Greg, I protested. You mustn't. It's all right, Mitty. We can trust him. Dana stood beside us, her lantern enveloping us in its circle of light. Immediately, she was on her knees beside me. You've been hurt. What happened? It's not a deep cut, she said, examining it. Examining it while I was explaining. Must have been a glancing blow, but you're going to have a terrific headache. Did you see anyone leaving the cave, Greg? No, I must have been just too late. Is it true? Is this the cave? Yes, but I beg you to keep our secret for the time being. No one must know about it, particularly Dr. Carrier. You ask a lot of newspaper men, he sighed. One condition, though, when you're ready, I get first crack at the story. Word of honor. What did you find down there? My curiosity was an excellent analgesic. Bones, pottery, bits of baskets, and this. She held up a tiny blue glass bead. The Mandans loved the blue glass trade beads brought over by the early settlers. This is similar, but cruder. If it should match up with the beads the Welsh used to make on the Isle of Lundy, then we'd have a real clue. But it's going to take time to do a scientific study. A part of the roof has caved in. Weren't you ever down there before? I asked. No, my father wouldn't take me into the lower chambers. He said they were too scared to be seen by one whose hair had not grayed, she explained, and she lifted her lantern. As she lifted her lantern, she noticed the toppled formations for the first time. Someone's been working here, she hissed. Damon, I suggested. I think we should notify the sheriff or Jim Willard, Greg said. This would, after all, constitute trespass. No, you mustn't, Dana was emphatic. It's not just Damon's project, it's something else. I don't know what, but I feel it. I don't like intruders here, she added, swinging her lantern around and making the witches and corn shocks sway in a macabre dance. Macduff was snuffing out a scent that led him toward the inner chamber. This is a holy place to me, she continued. We followed her to a remote corner of the cave where her light flickered over a mortared wall. My father is seated behind that, she said in a low voice. The hair on my neck stood on end. It was his last request, so that his spirit might always watch over this cave. She stopped as eerie howls echoed from deep within. I held tight to Greg's hands as we followed the sounds to the next chamber. Macduff was pawing and growling at something we couldn't make out in the dim light. As Dana brought her lantern forward, we gasped in horror. Blood was splashed on the walls and drying pools lay on the floor of the natural stage. Tufts of animal hair, red, white, and black, were scattered here and there on the ground, and in the middle of the mess lay Jupiter's striped, talus, mutilated body. How long is this next chapter? Quite a bit, so I'm not going to keep reading. I'll read something later. All right, bruvs, that's it. I can see no one's even here anyway, so all the better. I don't have to say goodbye to you sons of bitches. All right, bruvs, that's all. Goodbye.